¿Qué pasó, mi gente? Otra vez, it's MarkTip25. So, I just wanted to talk about my last video on rings matter, they've always mattered, you know, GOAT argument. I have some things to say on it. Like, there's some things I have now taken into consideration. And look, I mean, I still think Bill Russell is the greatest. I mean, because you cannot say winning and championships don't matter, because they do. That's just what it is. However, I will admit that Bill Russell's, you know, offensive prowess is not as great as it could have been, so that is a knock on him. I mean, I watched Rusty Bucket's Goatmentary, and he kind of shed some new light on things. I mean, there's still things I will stand by within my previous video. But overall, Bill Russell, you know, he just wasn't as good of an offensive player. But you know what? If you look at his rebounds and defensive stats, like blocks, he was still a heck of a player. And, you know, yeah, there were less teams in the league, which really attributed to why Bill Russell didn't have overall more and why Wilt Chamberlain had more games played. I mean, but see, even at the end of Bill Russell's career, Bill Russell, you know, they played against 14 teams. So the whole thing about there were less teams back in the day, yes, but the league did expand to 14 at the end of Bill Russell's career, and he played at least 3 seasons of that. So to sit here and say he only played 8 teams throughout his career is a bit asinine. You know, you have to look at the whole picture. You can't just look at certain aspects. So there's that. And yeah, and again, I've already explained that in the other video, but I might as well explain that again. And then just the utter disrespect of players just because they were shorter and of a certain race, which I don't understand the reason why we keep bringing that up, because there have been plenty of white players, black players, Hispanic players, Asian players that have played in this league and have gone on to do great things, whether on or off the court. So we probably need to stop bringing that up. Just to be honest, we shouldn't be doing that. Because Bill Russell, some of his Hall of Fame players were white. I mean, Sam and Casey Jones weren't, but Havlicek, Sharman, Heinsohn, they were white players. So we cannot sit here and say that they were garbage and then call them Hall of Famers, because that's kind of a bullshit deal. If you're going to sit here and say, oh, well, he had Hall of Fame teammates, only to call the white players in that era garbage, even though some of his players were white. But yeah, that's just my beef on that argument. And just, yeah, again, his whole statistics on his offense, he only put up 44% from the field goal and 44% from, you know, 18 points per game. I mean, granted, points per game is like combined points throughout, like average, on average. But to sit here and say he never scored over 20 before is, like, within a game is kind of asinine. He could do it. And yeah, could he have been more efficient? Maybe. But at this point, it is what it is. He was more of a defensive-minded player, and that's what got him those championships. You know, someone had to carry the load defensively. You know, and there weren't any, like, if you look at Rusty Bucket's videos, there weren't Defensive Player of the Year awards. There weren't all defensive teams. There weren't all NBA teams, like, or at least second all NBA teams and stuff. So if you put things into consideration, Bill Russell there's a little bit more to him than meets the eye. You know, there is a lot more to him than meets the eye. And, you know, to say he wasn't capable of scoring over 20 is ridiculous, because he's done it in the finals. But again, I'm of the mindset that what good are the points and the stats if they don't lead to wins? Because in the games he did score over 20, some of them have ended up in losses. There was a game where he scored 30 and it ended in a loss. So And see, the prime example of that is, Wilt Chamberlain. He's the antithesis to Bill Russell. Because Bill Russell, he was more defensive minded and team oriented, whereas Wilt Chamberlain was an offensive juggernaut and he was more self-serving. So that's just the thing. You have to have a happy medium, in which Wilt Chamberlain figured that out in one of his seasons and won a championship. Like, he got past Bill Russell one year. Like, imagine if, Bill Russell could have potentially had 12 championships in his ring case instead of 11. But Wilt Chamberlain got it together one year, and it's like, you know what? I need to be more well-rounded, and look what he got him. He got him a championship, but then he went back to his ways of, acting up. So had he at least, bought into a team mindset, Wilt Chamberlain probably could have had at least 4 or 5 more championships. And he's a heck of a player. Don't get me wrong. Wilt Chamberlain is still a heck of a player. You can, again, watch Rusty's documentary. He explains all the stuff about Wilt Chamberlain. But because of the era that Wilt and Bill were in, they don't get the credit. Because, there were only white players, or white players had more dominance within the league. But again, I've already explained, that's a double-edged sword. Because you can say that, mainly white people dominated, but that doesn't make all those white players less than Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. Some of them were very good, like Havlicek, Pettit, Sharman, Heinsohn, Shays. There's so many people you can say that were in that era that were really dang good. So, I don't know. You could take that as you will. You really can take that as you will. But overall, I think Bill Russell is the GOAT. And again, what I said in my previous video and what I'm saying within this video right now is strictly opinionated. Same as Rusty's video, same as any other, YouTuber. Granted, some of them are more fact-based and statistic-based to prove a point. But I will agree to an extent, and I will concede that Bill Russell wasn't that good offensively. But that does not take him entirely out of the GOAT conversation, in my opinion, because there's other aspects to the game besides offense. There really is. And by the way, there's offensive rebounds and there's defensive rebounds. Bill Russell was good on both. You know what I mean? So rebounds are just as much a part of offense as they are of defense. So that's my deal on that. But yeah, you can make the case for Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is amazing. He's like 4th all-time in points. He has a lot of awards and statistics that would point in his direction. You could say the same thing about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He is a 6-time champion as well, and has a lot of other awards and stats. And he did it in high school, college, and the NBA. So you have a case for him. Again, Rusty's documentary has all the players that most people would consider the GOAT, right? Those players. And right now, Tim Duncan's in that. He's going to be in his upcoming one. And, I'm sorry, Tim does have a case. He has a really legitimate case. 5-time championships? 5-time champion? Come on. Of course he has a case. Of course. But again, I think Bill Russell's the greatest. That's just my opinion. And again, we can talk about it in the comments. You can dispute it with me. And because again, and I'll agree, because I forgot to mention this. I will agree that I've been hypocritical, because I've been on record stating that Rajon Rondo isn't as good as people make him out to be because he doesn't score as well. So I will admit that is a bit hypocritical that I put Bill Russell as my greatest, yet I trash on Rajon Rondo. And look, again, I've already said Rajon Rondo is a hell of a passing wizard. But see, the difference between Russell and Rajon Rondo is that Russell was a defensive juggernaut. People say that, oh, Rajon Rondo is a great defensive player, but I don't necessarily see that. Like, Rajon Rondo has his moments, but I don't think he's that good of a defensive player. Because there's been plenty of games I've seen in his career where he's just slacking. You know? And Rajon Rondo also has a history of being a self, all about himself. When it comes to, like, him getting his assist, him doing what he wants to do instead of what's best for the team. He's the only player I've seen that where he passes the ball and still is a detriment to the team. Because, again, like, you have to be more well-balanced. Because that's the thing. When Bill Russell needed to score, he could score. Was he always efficient? Not necessarily, but he could do it. Where Rajon Rondo, there's been many moments where he has a chance to help his team get over the hump, but he misses key shots. He's not good from three-point range. I don't know. That's just my opinion. You can dispute me. This is why we're here. I want to connect with you all. I want to learn more from you all. That's why I do this. Because first of all, I love sports. It's a hobby. But I always want to, learn different perspectives. Because, again, I'm not always right. I don't claim to be right. But I do feel that there are certain things that need to be taken into consideration, and that there are certain players that need to stop being disrespected, and there's some players that need to stop being put on a pedestal. You know what I mean? Like, Bill Russell, I'm sorry. Like, he's one of the most disrespected legends I've ever seen. Wilt Chamberlain as well. But to an extent, Bill Russell, especially since he has the hardware to prove he's a legitimate player. But anyhow. Oh, and sorry, one more thing about the Hall of Fame players. Everyone trashes on them, but then tries to use that as an argument against Bill Russell. So I don't know. It's hypocritical. But then, just overall, like, it's just, I don't know. It's just ridiculous to me how everybody loves to say that Bill Russell had all this help, but yet players like LeBron James, when they did have help with Wade and Bosh, with Kyrie and Love, and then Wilt Chamberlain had Greer, Wilt Chamberlain had West, and, Elgin Baylor. Magic Johnson had Kareem, and vice versa, and, Cooper, and Worthy. Larry Bird had McHale. Jordan had Pippen, and Rodman. Everybody at some point in their time has had help. And and like when players come highly regarded, I don't know. It's like the whole argument about the Hall of Fame player. It's not like they were considered Hall of Famers at the time when they were winning those championships. They only became so later, after probably the third or fourth championship, right? And again, you can't really blame Bill Russell for being part of a world-class organization in the Boston Celtics. They knew how to create a team. They knew how to draft. So that's of no fault of Bill Russell. The amount of teams in the league are no fault of Bill Russell. The playoff, the way the playoffs were set up is no fault of Russell. Again, you don't get to choose what era you played in. You just play with what you're given and you do well with it. And Bill Russell made the most of his opportunities, and that's why I consider him the greatest. Again, that's my opinion. You can dispute about it in the comment section. But that's all I have for today, guys. Suscríbale a mi canal y hasta la próxima, mi gente. Adiós.